everyone. This is Doug Ballinger, and you're listening to Logan's Voice. If you're new here, welcome. This podcast was born out of loss, out of love, and out of a need to tell the truth, especially when the truth is uncomfortable. My son Logan died in 2020 from fentanyl poisoning. And while that's the hardest sentence I'll ever say, it's also the reason I'm here. Because Logan mattered, his life mattered, and so do the lives of thousands of kids we're losing every single month. Today's episode is one I've had on my heart for a while, and it's called The Kids Aren't All Right: Why Gen Z is Drowning in Pressure. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about blaming social media or shaming parents or calling a generation weak. It's about seeing them, really seeing our kids. Because if we don't, we risk losing more of them to silence, to shame, and to substances that promise relief but end in tragedy. When Logan was a teenager, we didn't fully understand what he was carrying. We knew he was smart and sensitive and creative, but he was also overwhelmed, anxious, and trying to figure out who he was in a world that didn't make space for kids like him. He wasn't alone in that. There are millions of Logans out there, and many of them are struggling right now, quietly. In this episode, we're going to talk about the pressures this generation faces, the kind that don't always show up in test scores or report cards. We'll look at how anxiety and depression are pushing teens toward dangerous coping methods and why pretending it's just a phase could cost lives. This isn't just an episode for parents. It's for teachers, grandparents, coaches, neighbors, anyone who's got a young person in their orbit, because they don't need us to fix everything. They need us to show up, ask questions, and stop pretending that kids are resilient enough to carry all this alone. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what Gen Z is really facing and what we can do to help before it's too late. Let's start with the pressure. Not the kind we think of when we talk about kids. You know, do your homework, make good choices, be respectful. I'm talking about the kind of pressure that sits on a kid's chest before they even walk out the door in the morning. Gen Z is growing up in a world that tells them they have to achieve everything, look perfect doing it, and never mess up. They're expected to get straight A's, join every extracurricular, apply to college by 15, start a side hustle, and save the planet, all while pretending they're fine. That's not childhood. That's survival with a smile on. Now, add this. Many of the kids have never known a world without school shootings, lockdown drills, climate panic, political division, and now a mental health epidemic that's quietly exploding in their classrooms, bedrooms, and digital feeds. And the pandemic, that's just magnified everything. We locked them in their rooms, gave them Zoom school, and acted like they'd bounce back. But for some, they didn't. Some are still lost in that quiet space where isolation taught them to fake a smile and numb the pain. I saw it with Logan. He struggled in school not because he wasn't smart, but because he didn't learn the way they wanted him to. And when you're a kid in a system that only celebrates one kind of success, it chips away at you. He was creative, intuitive, funny, but the message he got from teachers, from peers, sometimes even from us, was that he was too much in the wrong ways and not enough in the right ones. That kind of message sinks deep into a kid. And after a while, they start believing it. I'm not enough. I'm not normal. I'll never measure up. What do you do when you feel that way and you don't have the tools to say it out loud? You find a way to quiet the noise. For some kids, it's perfectionism. For others, it's withdrawal. And for too many, it's pills, powders, bottles, and substances that promise peace and somehow deliver death. We have to stop asking what's wrong with them and start asking what happened to them. Why are they trying to survive? This generation isn't fragile. They're overwhelmed. And if we want to help them, We need to stop pushing performance and start prioritizing mental health at home, at school, and everywhere in between. That's what this show is about. Not just telling Logan's story, but using it to help see your own kids or your students, your grandkids, before it's too late. So let's talk about social media. Not in a finger wagging, kids and their phones kind of way, but as a real part of the pressure equation. Because for Gen Z, social media isn't just a tool, it's the world they live in. It's where they hang out, express themselves, compare themselves, build their identity, and sometimes lose themselves completely. Imagine being young and waking up every day to a feed full of other people's filtered lives. Perfect bodies, perfect skin, perfect friends, and perfect vacations. Now, imagine scrolling through that when you're already feeling anxious, insecure, or like you don't measure up. And every swipe just reminds you what you don't have and what you aren't. That's the daily reality for a lot of kids. They're measuring their own self worth in likes, views, followers, streaks, and when they don't get that validation, it can hit like rejection over and over again. It's not just a confidence issue, it's neurological. These platforms are designed to hook them with the same dopamine hits, the same brain chemical that plays a big role in addiction. And if a kid is already vulnerable, maybe they've got trauma, depression, ADHD, maybe they feel like they don't belong. That constant comparison can tip them over the edge. Logan was born just before smartphones really took over, but I still saw how online spaces affected him. He'd get caught up in image, how he looked, what people thought of him. He wanted to belong. He wanted to stand out. And at times, he wanted to just disappear. That's the paradox of social media for a lot of young people. It promises connection, but so often delivers isolation. Then there's the dark side, the parts we don't see unless we're really paying attention. Kids are being bullied anonymously on platforms like Yik Yak and Snapchat. Group chats where someone gets excluded or targeted, and messages offering fake pills or party drugs with emojis and coded language. Videos that glamorize drug use, self-harm, or even suicide, and they disguise them as humor, but that sinks into their subconscious. And we wonder why they're struggling to cope. And we say, well, I had it hard too when I was a kid, but we didn't carry the whole world's judgment in our pockets. We weren't constantly bombarded by curated perfection, 24/7 noise, and unrelenting digital pressure. Kids today are growing up in a world that's loud, fast, and brutal. And they're trying their best to survive it. But survival doesn't look like thriving, it looks like hiding. It looks like numbing. And too often, it looks like a bright, beautiful kid reaching for a pill that they think will help them breathe and not waking up. If we want to keep our kids safe, we can't just take away the phone. We have to enter the conversation. We have to teach them how to think critically about what they see, how to process what they feel, and how to find real connection in a world that thrives on disconnection. Because underneath the filters, the streaks, the likes, are real kids with real pain, asking us to notice them. So now we've looked at the weight our kids are carrying, from constant performance pressure to the mental strain of a digital life. But what happens when all that becomes too much? What happens when a kid feels like they can't talk to anyone, or that no one would understand even if they did? They try to quiet it, not with words, but with whatever works in the moment. And for far too many, that ends up being substances. Let me say something plainly here. A lot of kids aren't using drugs because they're trying to party. They're using because they're trying to survive, to feel better, to feel nothing, or to feel something. to stop the loop in their heads that tells them they're not enough, that they're failing, that they don't belong. We often miss this. We chalk it up to rebellion or bad choices. But underneath so many of those choices is a deeper question. How do I make this pain stop? Logan wrestled with that pain. He was loved by his parents, his grandparents. He laughed loud, hugged hard, and lit up every room he walked into. But he was also a kid who didn't feel like he fit the mold. He struggled in school, not because he wasn't smart. He was incredibly smart, but because the system didn't know how to teach someone like him. He got labeled early, ADHD, disruptive and hard to manage, and with that label came the pills, Ritalin to be exact. That was the first message. There's something wrong with you, and this pill will fix it. Now, I'm not here to debate medication. For some kids, it's life-changing in a good way. But for Logan, and for many like him, it planted the seed that there's a chemical solution for emotional discomfort. And once that seed's planted, it's not hard to see how it grows. Later came weed, pills, whatever he could get from friends or people pretending to be friends. And like most kids in that world, he didn't start with fentanyl. He didn't even know that's what he was taking at the end. He thought it was heroin. He thought he was numbing the pain, not stepping into a trap, but the trap was set and it was fatal. That's the thing people need to understand. This isn't just about addiction. This is about poisoning. We have a generation trying to cope, and the tools they're reaching for are laced with death. Press pills that look like Xanax or Percocet, powders that are cut with fentanyl or xylazine or God knows what else. Kids think they're experimenting, but they're not. They're playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets in the chamber. So many parents say afterwards, but he wasn't a drug addict, or she only tried it once. And I believe them, because the line between coping and catastrophe is razor thin now. And still, we blame them. We talk about bad decisions instead of broken systems. We label them junkies instead of asking why they're hurting to begin with. That's why I share Logan's story. Not to shock people, not to scare them, but to wake them up. We need to shift the conversation from punishment to prevention, from shame to compassion, from how could they to how can we help them before it's too late. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you asked a young person how they were really doing and then waited long enough to hear the real answer? I don't mean, how's school? I mean, what's been heavy on your mind lately? What's keeping you up at night? Because here's what I've learned, not just as a father who's lost his son, but as someone who's walking alongside countless other grieving families. Silence is deadly, not just from the kids, but from us, the adults. Sometimes we're afraid to ask. Sometimes we think, if I bring it up, I'll plant the idea. Sometimes we assume our kid would just never do that. And sometimes, if we're being honest, we just don't know how to handle the truth we might hear. But let me tell you, it is better to have an uncomfortable conversation than to plan a funeral. Logan was good at hiding things when he needed to. He knew how to tell me, his mom, his grandparents, different versions of the same story. Just enough truth to keep us off balance. That's what kids do when they're trying to avoid disappointment. When they don't want to be judged, when they're in over their heads and don't know how to say help. And as parents, we so badly want to believe them because the truth is hard. The truth means we might have to act. And it also means admitting that something could happen to our kid. But here's the reality. Addiction doesn't start with a needle. It starts in silence. It starts when kids feel misunderstood, unheard, like they have to keep the worst parts of themselves hidden just to be loved. The thing is, they don't need us to have all the answers. They just need us to be a safe place to land, a place where they can say, I'm not okay without fear of punishment or shame, a place where what's wrong with you gets replaced with, I'm here no matter what. So if you're listening right now and you've got a teenager or a grandchild or a student or a neighbor who seems a little more withdrawn lately, check in, ask again, then ask again. Because sometimes the first few answers are rehearsed. They're protection. But if you stay with them long enough, if you show them that your love is stronger than your fear, the real story starts to come out. And sometimes that conversation can be the one that saves their life. I couldn't save Logan, but I can use my voice to help you see your child sooner than I saw mine, to help you break the silence before it breaks your family. So, what can we do? It's easy to feel helpless in the face of this crisis, like the wave is just too big, the system is just too broken, and the kids are just too far gone. But I'm here to tell you, we are not powerless. We may not be able to change the whole world overnight, but we can change the way we show up in ours. And that starts with presence. Our kids don't need us to be perfect. They don't need polished advice or nonstop lectures. What they need more than anything is our attention. Genuine, undistracted, heart wide open attention. They need us to see them, to notice when their spark dims, to listen without trying to fix, and to hold space for their pain without rushing to cover it up with cliches like, oh, it's just a phase, or you'll get over it. So here are a few real practical ways you can start showing up differently today. Ask better questions. Instead of, how was school? Try something like, what made you laugh today? What was the hardest part of your day? Did anything feel heavy this week? And then just listen. Sit with whatever they give you. You don't have to solve it. You just have to be there. And normalize mental health conversations. Treat emotional check-ins like brushing your teeth, a regular part of life. Share your own struggles when it's appropriate. Let them see that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a doorway to connection. And stop assuming they're fine because they're smiling. Some of the most hurting kids are the ones who laugh the loudest. Check in on the good ones, the high achievers, the quiet ones. Depression, anxiety, and trauma don't always look how you expect. And know the warning signs. Learn what to look for, like sudden changes in sleep or appetite, losing interest in things they used to love, isolating themselves, secretive behavior or lying, changes in friends groups, physical signs like weight loss, bloodshot eyes, or slurred speech. And when in doubt, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. And lastly, create a no shame zone. If your kid messes up, if they try something dangerous, if they admit to using, don't respond with anger. Respond with love and boundaries. You can be firm and still be kind. You can hold them accountable and still hold their heart. Remember, you're not trying to win a power struggle, you're trying to win their trust. And I know this might sound like a lot, but let me remind you why this matters. Because right now, there's a parent out there who thinks their kid would never do drugs. There's a teacher who thinks their student looks just fine. And there's a coach, a pastor, a neighbor, assuming someone else will have the hard conversation. But sometimes the conversation doesn't happen until it's too late, until a coroner makes the call, until a parent stands in a cemetery instead of at graduation, until the silence becomes permanent. You don't have to wait for the tragedy to be the turning point. You can start now, today, by seeing your kid, by loving them without conditions, by helping them carry what's too heavy alone, Because even if they roll their eyes, even if they say, I'm fine, your presence tells the truth. They may not be able to say it out loud yet. You matter. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Before I close today's episode, I want to speak to you directly, not just as a podcast host, not just as an advocate, but as Logan's dad. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for being here and listening. I know these conversations aren't easy. They're heavy. They dig up feelings we'd rather keep buried. They force us to admit that sometimes love isn't enough to prevent the worst from happening. But I believe with everything in me that love can still change the ending for someone else. Logan was a beautiful soul. He was bold, funny, messy, complicated, and full of light. He made people laugh so hard they cried. He also carried more pain than he knew how to name. And in a world that didn't always make space for that kind of truth, he did what so many young people do. He tried to carry it alone, and it crushed him. If I could go back, I would slow down more, listen harder, ask one more question, tell him every single day that he didn't have to be anything more than who he already was to be worthy of love, protection, and help. But I can't go back. So now I speak to other parents, other families, other hearts that might still have time. And I say this: don't wait until it's too late to make your love louder than their silence. Don't assume your child is okay just because they're smiling in pictures. Don't let fear stop you from having the conversation that might save their life. If you hear nothing else from this episode, hear this: you don't have to fix it all. You just have to show up and keep showing up, even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable, even when they push you away. Because the truth is, most of them aren't asking you to save them. They're asking you to see them, love them louder, and never stop fighting for them, even when they're too tired to fight for themselves. This is Logan's voice, and it's also your child's voice, and your neighbor's kid, and the friend who sits alone at lunch, and the teen who just got suspended but is secretly hoping someone will ask what's really going on. We're all connected in this, and the way forward is together. If today's episode moved you, grab a copy of my book, Logan's Story: A Father's Fight Against the Fentanyl Crisis, available now on Amazon. And check out Logan's Voice swag shop at logansvoice.com, where every shirt and every item helps spread awareness and spark conversations. Please like, share, drop a comment. Your voice helps carry this message further than mine ever could. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for loving boldly. And thank you for helping me carry Logan's light into the places that need it the most. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and fierce for the ones you love. I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad. And I will not be silent.